Okay, I've been changing my oil for quite a while now. It was one of the first things I started doing that got me into a lot more things. But if this is your first time changing your oil, it can save you some money. It may not save you money. It just depends. But I used to do it to save myself some money. Now I just do it because I feel safer with me working on my car, and I know what kind of oil is going in. So um, anyway, what you want to get together, um, get your oil and oil additive. I like to use this Restore once in a while. Um, get a drain pan. I like to use this restaurant pan with the corner bent down a little bit. It pours really good into the recyclable oil container. It also cleans up real easy with the paper towel and everything. It's pretty easy to get clean. And then you want some gloves, and then this is the best oil wrench. It'll get off just about any oil filter. And then of course you want a set of sockets and a breaker bar. Now the first time you do your car, you probably need a pipe on the end of your breaker bar. For some reason, in general, the people that you pay to do your oil tighten that oil pan bolt way too tight. And they also tighten the filter tight. Sometimes you need to put a screwdriver through it and just mangle it to turn it. But I've had to do that once or twice. But once you get to changing it yourself, you just snug it up, and next time it's easy to get apart. I like to use a rug or a piece of cardboard to get under here. Then you want to jack up your car. Now I usually use 2 wooden ramps made specially for this, but they're packed away. So I've got it jacked up, and then I've got another bottle jack holding it. So I've got 2 jacks, which should be safe. But just make sure you have a jack holding up the other jack. So a jack stand is best. I couldn't find mine. But just be very careful. What you want to do is the oil pan is the very first pan in the front of your car here that has a bolt on it. And then you don't want to do the transmission pan. Generally it does not have a bolt. I did put one in mine, but the transmission pan is usually back further. So find your oil pan and then check the size of your bolt. I'm going to take this off and let it drain. Okay, I've got the oil draining. That's the first thing you do. If you do, by the way, take your car to one of those quick lube oil change shops, just be sure they're not putting Quaker State oil in your car. And always check the oil level after you leave. I had a friend that had hers done one time, and they forgot to put the oil in it. Sometimes they overfill it, sometimes they underfill it. Now, the oil filter on this car is right here, very easy access. Once the oil's drained, then you want to go to your oil filter. If you can't find where it's at, generally you can do a YouTube search. So I'm going to take this oil filter off once this drains, and I'll be right back. Okay, it's still draining. You want to let it drain until there's barely anything coming out. Just gets all that old oil out. Just take your time. Once that just gets to a dribble, then I will move the pan. We'll put the bolt back in, tighten it up, and then we'll move the pan over underneath the oil filter. Now, I wiped down. It's nice to have some paper towels with you, and put your gloves on. I wiped down this. It appears that my oil pressure switch was leaking. I don't know, there was a lot of oil under there, right there, but someday I'll maybe get that changed out. I've been told the best kind of oil filter to get is a Wix, W-I-X, so that's the kind that I buy, and it seemed to have worked pretty good for me. The heavier your oil filter, the higher quality it is. So say if you go to O'Reilly's and they have a choice of 2 different ones, ask to hold them and just pick the heavier one. Now this bolt here happened to be a 15 millimeter. It just depends on your car. Sometimes it's a 12, sometimes it's a 13, or it could be a 16. When you go to tighten this up, be very careful you don't strip the threads. Don't manhandle it. Just tighten it up until it stops turning, and then just give it another good tug. And if you're uncomfortable, drive it for a little bit and just look down there and see if there's any oil coming out. You do the same thing with the oil filter. Now, before you put the plug in, you want to wipe it down real good, get the grit off of it, and check the washer. It's not a bad idea to replace that washer every time. It just depends. If it's a crush washer, it's a good idea to replace it, an aluminum crush or copper. But I got a silicone washer here, so I'm hoping it holds up a little longer. Most times you can get a replacement bolt and washer come as a pair on Rock Auto. Sometimes I get my Wix oil filters from Rock Auto too. If you get 3 or 4 at a time, it can save you a little bit of money. Okay, I've got my plug back in. I've wiped everything down. Now, while you got your car up to do the oil change, it's a good idea, a good time to check for any other oil leaks, and also a good time to check your axle and axle boots if you got any question about them. Okay, now I'm going to take this oil filter off. Okay, I've loosened it, and right here, what you want to do, you want to have your pan under here, and once you get this all the way unscrewed, sometimes it can be pretty messy. Whoop. You turn it over like a cup and just let all the oil come out of it. Now, I've always had a hard time knowing what to do with this filter. I've tried to recycle them. Some of the big box stores will take them and some won't. But definitely recycle your oil. It's very toxic to the environment. It's nice to have some plastic bags around too to put all your trash. Now, I just get the standard Wix filter. I think they make a heavy duty one too. This one is for a 2003 Cadillac DeVille. So what you want to do is take your filter out of the box, and you want to put some oil in your filter if possible. Now, my filter sits up in the engine straight up, so I can fill this to the top with oil before I install it. If you have a filter that goes off to the side like this, you're only going to be able to put in a little bit of oil because it'll all spill out. And some of them go on like this, and that, kind of cockeyed. In that case, you can fill it about 3/4 full. Okay, so it'll come to the top, you'll think it's full, but then it settles down in there. And you gotta add some more. Every time it comes to the top, let it go down in there and keep adding it till you get it to the top. Now include this oil. Remember how much you use, include that in your total amount of oil. Sometimes a filter can take a half quart of oil or more. Okay, I've got it filled up with oil. You also want to put a very thin film of clean oil around the gasket here. Then, once you get into the car, you want to make sure the gasket area is also wiped down on the car. So, I'm going to install this now. Okay, just make sure your area is clean and smooth. And then just gently put your filter up there and get the thread started. Sometimes you got to turn it counterclockwise to get the thread started. Be very careful. Okay, it just turns on real easy. And once it stops turning like that, you want to get your wrench and just turn it until it pretty much stops spinning. Just snug it up. Okay, that was wrong of me to say that. You shouldn't turn it till it stops spinning, because this will keep going on tighter and tighter. You do not want to tighten this too tight. Once you tighten it on by hand, take your wrench and do about another half to 3/4 a turn with the wrench. You'll still be able to turn it some more, but do not do that. You need a little bit of give on the seal there, and you do not want to strip it out. Now, in all the oil changes I've done, I've never had any trouble with the bolt coming out, or generally I've never had a problem with this filter leaking. So if you're unsure about your work, just double check it once you start your car and just see if anything's leaking. By the way, here's some oil wrenches I've used in the past. This type is a socket, and it goes on the end of the oil filter. But to be honest with you, they've never really done a good job for me. A lot of times you don't have room for your wrench to turn, and can't get in there to get a good grip on it, especially with these kind here. But anyway, the kind that I used has gotten out just about every one I've ever tried. Okay, I've got my oil container here that I'm going to use to take the oil up to the store to recycle it. Usually any auto parts store will take it for you. And I like to put a plastic bag underneath at the bottom in case it drips, and then a funnel makes it nice. But with this restaurant pan, don't necessarily need a funnel. But anyway, I'm going to pour this in. Okay, I like to set my pan up like that and just let it drain a little bit more. And that way I don't have to use so many paper towels. Okay, at this point I like to clean up a little bit, get my mess in order, and take these jack stands out. So that's what I'm going to do now. Things cleaned up a little bit, and now I'm going to add the oil here. Now this car takes about 7¼ cups, quarts, and I usually start by putting in about 7. And remember, you've already put in about a ½ quart in the oil filter. So I'm going to fill this up. I'm just using Wolfhead's oil. I can get it down the street for cheaper than I can get it at any auto parts store. Just use a major brand, and sometimes just make sure you look on the back and make sure it's not Quaker State. If you're not familiar with the brand, there's only about 3 oil companies, and they just produce oil under different labels. But if it's an off-brand and you look on the back, it'll tell you if it comes from Quaker State or not. Okay, I've put in about 7 quarts, and now I'm going to check the level. Just stick right here. Okay, now I've been told, I don't know if you can see this, but I've been told on the Cadillac DeVille, do not fill this to the top of the hatch marks, because that makes it use more oil. So generally I will get it at least halfway and maybe 3/4 of the way. I don't know if you can see this or not. Now, to get a true reading, you're going to have to close everything up and start the car for just a second or two. Okay, I started it up just for a few seconds. Now, if you're uneasy about all this, just look under your car before you start it. Make sure you don't have oil dripping. But I think you should be okay. And if you still have your car on ramps, of course you need to back off your ramps. Now, if you do use those metal drive-up ramps or the plastic ones, be sure you put your brake on when you're on top of those. I've tried those. I don't particularly like them. A lot of times they'll slip while I'm trying to drive up them. And I wanted to tell you too about the oil container. This one had a yellow funnel there. It's been lost. And I've tried to use this kind of thing to change my oil. They're made, to be your oil pan, but they're so shallow and the oil splatters. And so I only tried one once or twice, and it just made a big mess. And that's why I stick with the restaurant pan. Okay, this isn't even touching the hatch mark, so looks like it could use another half a quart. Okay, I got it about 1/4 of the way up into the hatch mark, so I'm gonna put my oil cap back on and leave it. I'm not quite level on the ground here, so I don't want to chance overfilling it. So next time I'm on a level surface, I'll check it. Okay, I decided to do my 2000 Dodge Dakota, and I think this takes about 4 coats of oil, and I think it might be a 16mm bolt. Now this one is a little bit easier. I don't have to jack this up. For me, you might have to jack it up, but what I do is I go in from behind the front right wheel, and when I get under there, I'll show you where the oil pan is. Before I go under there, I wanted to tell you I couldn't find a Wix filter on Rock Auto for this truck, so I went ahead and got the Mopar one, which I think will be okay. Okay, as you come up underneath this truck, you see the oil pan right there. Now behind it, as you go towards the back wheels, you'll see the transmission pan, which has a bolt in it too, a drain bolt. So don't do that one. Make sure you get the oil pan up front. Okay, I'm scooched in here under my back. On my back, it is kind of a tight fit. And I got this loose. Okay, it was 16mm. Whoop. Drop the bolt down in there. Alright. We'll let that drain a little bit. I'm upside down. Now, from my viewpoint, if you follow the drain pan straight over to the right front tire, you'll see the fuel filter there. I don't know if you can see it in there, the white. Right there it is. I'm going to try to loosen that up once I get this oil finished draining and get the plug back in. Okay, I've got the bolt back in, and now I've got to squeeze under here a little bit further so I can reach this oil filter with my left hand. Okay, I was able to get it loose with that tool. It's a tight fit, so you can only turn it. As you see, I got it finger loose, so I'll put my drain pan under there, slowly take it off. Okay, wasn't a lot of oil that drained out, so it wasn't a big mess. Now I'm going to wipe that up, and I'll fill the new oil filter with a little bit of oil and screw it back up in there. Now, I didn't fill this up as much because it does tilt a little bit when you screw it in. One thing I wanted to mention, when you're using these pliers here to take the filter off, you can crush the filter, that's okay. But when you're tightening your filter on, be real careful you don't crush the side of your filter at all with these. Okay, so I did get a little bit too much oil in it because when I went to screw it in, it started spilling out the side a little bit, but I just wiped it off with a paper towel. I've got it gently tightened, gently hand tightened. Now I'm gonna tighten it a little bit more with the wrench. Okay, I gave it about a half a turn more. It feels pretty snug. So I'm gonna pull my old pan back out of here, my drain pan, and get things cleaned up. Boy, that oil is black. Alright, 85 degrees out here, and it's getting hot. It's supposed to get up to 90. So I'm gonna get in here and try to get this done quickly. One thing I did want to mention before I got started, one time I had this oil cap break and this top came off, and I got a little scared because I didn't know if I could get in there to get some oil in the truck. But it just takes a screwdriver, the flathead screwdriver, you put it in there and you can turn it and get it out of there and order you a new one.